What's going on, everyone? Scott here. Welcome back to the channel. So Michigan State football kicks off their season this upcoming Friday against Western Michigan in Spartan Stadium for Jonathan Smith's second year here with the program, coming off of a 5-7 year one. Not exactly what we expected. We expected a little bit more year one, but as the year went on, we definitely saw the reasons why that was the record. But there is some optimism going here into year two under Jonathan Smith. But last year was the third straight year without a bowl game. Just absolutely cannot happen here at Michigan State. Mark Dantonio set that precedent when he got here back in 2007, and as he went through his years, only missed one bowl game during his time here at Michigan State, and set that standard at Michigan State. A bowl game is the absolute bare minimum that is acceptable here. This is now 3 straight years of no bowl games. Obviously, two, really almost 3 different coaching staffs and whatnot during that time. So this year is the year for Michigan State to hopefully get back on track of bare minimum getting to a bowl game and start winning some big time games and start seeing the improvement in this roster and this team. Besides 2021, have not seen that since the Mark Dantonio days here. So definitely a lot to look forward to this year. So we're going to go through, break down the roster. I'm going to give what my predictions are for the starting lineup for Michigan State. Some of this stuff, as you'll see as we talk through it, will be a little bit more fluid as we go through the season. Some positions, obviously, I believe are pretty set in stone, as of right now. Everything seems set in stone for a handful of positions, but other ones, as we said, will be kind of more fluid, especially through the first couple of weeks. But these are just my post-camp, pre-first game predictions for the starting lineup. We're going to go through that, and then we are also going to look at Michigan State's schedule. The home schedule, I believe, is manageable for the most part, but definitely some really tough road games on the schedule this year. But yeah, we're going to talk about all that, what the expectations are for this season as a whole. But before we do that, if you could just hit that like and subscribe button down there. We'll have more Michigan State football content on the channel all season long, more college football content on the channel all season long. We're just getting started here this week. This is just the Michigan State team season preview, if you will. We're going to have a Big Ten college football, kind of preview predictions as a whole video coming out here as well this week. Then, of course, it's obviously game week here for Michigan State. We're going to have a preview for the Western Michigan game as well. After the game, we'll have recaps. We'll have previews and recaps for every single game this football season. So just make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a video. So kind of just starting before we jump into player-wise. As I said, the schedule is always going to be hard in the Big Ten, but their home slate, for the most part, I think is fairly manageable or fairly favorable, I guess, whatever way you want to put it. Probably underdogs in 2 of the 6 or 7 home games. And I say 6 or 7 home games. Technically, the 7th is Ford Field, but still will be a home game for Michigan State, definitely. Probably underdogs in 2 of those games, kind of as of right now. They will probably be underdogs in the game against that school down the road and that game against Penn State. So obviously, those games are late October and into November. So a lot could change between now and then, but that's just my, early prediction of underdogs. But the road games, definitely a lot tougher. In my opinion, 3 of the 4 games are against teams that I think could see some time in the top 25 or, are just a tough place to play in general. Now jumping into the personnel, we'll start out at quarterback. Aiden Chiles, I think a lot of this, I think a lot of year 2 will have to deal, for Jonathan Smith, we'll have to deal with year 2 of the full starter experience of Aiden Chiles and the depth created on the offensive line and on the roster as a whole. But starting here with Aiden Chiles, first year as a starter, 13 touchdowns, 11 interceptions with just over 2,400 yards. And we saw the incredible raw talent all year long. And that has some people believing that he could be the first quarterback off the board in not 2026, but 2027 NFL draft. But then there were some games where, 1 or 2 of these decisions that were made by Aiden Chiles, a throw, a scramble here or there, those decisions put Michigan State in not the best position to be successful and win that game. No one game is decided by, one person or one play, whatnot. But there was definitely some situations where, a play of trying to do too much definitely did cost Michigan State. And, I believe he would be the first to admit that. But the Boston College game really encapsulates that perfectly. All game was making really incredible plays, extending the pocket, really creating plays. Think of the one where he, gets out of the pocket, goes left, goes right, goes around, then, makes a good throw. And we saw that a handful of times, throughout the season, different games. Not even just that, but just the arm talent that he has as well. The Iowa game, the Maryland game, to kick off the Big Ten season last year. But that Boston College game, you also see the 3 interceptions and that one in the last minute where he tried to force that down into the back of the end zone and it gets intercepted. And that was the game. Definitely a throw that you probably don't need to make. Throw it out of bounds, live to fight another day. And I think that will, be something that you are looking for in year 2 of a full starter experience for Aiden Childs is not taking you know, the not taking so many risks. Like, yes, he can make every throw, I believe, at the college level, but you don't always need to make every throw at the college level. Sometimes it is best to just, is this smart? No, let's just toss it out, live to see another play. You look at the game against that school down the road as well. The fumble before half and, what otherwise was a fairly efficient game and overall good game for Aiden Childs as well. But and a good game plan from the staff, really. And that was Nathan Carter's best game as a Spartan. But you're looking at the end of the first half, and Aiden, he rolls out, ends up fumbling. They go down, they score, then they have all the momentum rolling into the second half there. And those are just 2 games that really stick out because those I think are 2 games from last season that I definitely think that. And reading some tea leaves from Aiden as well, I think those are definitely 2 games that he feels like and the team feels like that they probably should have won last year. Obviously, you win those 2 games, you're sitting at 7 wins last year, and things are looking a lot different. You get to a bowl game, year 1, you win a rivalry game, you win a big time, road game against, not saying Boston College is a top, 25 team in a, behemoth place to play, but that's a good non-conference. That would have been a good non-conference road win. Is the point of it, and then you win a rivalry game on the road. So those are definitely 2 games that you would like to have back. But looking at the second half of last year for Aiden Childs, going 8 touchdowns and only 3 interceptions over the last 6 games, that is more of the ratio we need to see this year. We don't want, because he is so, still, raw and can make these incredible plays, we don't want him to just, not try things and do that. So you're going to expect, interceptions. I mean, that's kind of the thing if you watch the NBA with the Warriors. I mean, that's kind of what Steve Kerr, the line that he crossed, or, kind of had to straddle that line of, hey, Steph and Clay, Draymond, there's going to make these crazy plays, behind the back plays, shoot these incredible threes and shots, but they're so great that sometimes they're going to go in. But, sometimes you're going to have to live with, we're turning the ball over, X amount of times per game, putting ourselves in a bad spot. But we're so incredible and can do these incredible wow moment factor things that, that can possibly make up for it. So it's kind of towing that line with Aiden Childs, but I think just being more efficient, as we said, cutting those turnovers down. And then really, a lot of it falls on the quarterback, but finishing in the red zone. I mean, so many times last year, you get down to the red zone, you just can't finish. You're settling for a field goal, and more on the field goal and the kicking, part, we'll get to later. But, that's definitely kind of a question mark going into the season. So got to finish this thing with touchdowns, and that start with Aiden Childs, getting everything kind of set up more efficiently, finishing drives once you get into the red zone, scoring touchdowns instead of field goals. Because I like 7 points as opposed to 3 points. Simple math equation there, I guess, if you will. But more of Childs on the ground as well. We saw flashes last year, 71 yards against Illinois, 70 in that Boston College game in the beginning of the year as well. But these opportunities, I'd like, designed, not the, the pocket's collapsing, he's got to make something happen. That's obviously going to happen throughout the course of a game and a season. But I want to see, not him having to make this magic happen. I'm not saying let's, throw him out there like he's just a, straight running quarterback and run him, 10, 14 times a game. But I would like to see, 4 to 7, times a game. Maybe you draw in here, a little draw for the quarterback, or, a little option going to, one of the sides, one of your tackles, and, try to get off the edge there. I think that would be beneficial for this offense that, does have some question marks in the running back room coming into this year with, some new faces going to be taking over the running back corps this year. And on that note, we will slide into the running back game, and that's definitely a question mark going into the season. It seems like Brandon Tullis, sophomore Brandon Tullis and sophomore Makai Frazier are leading the pack currently. Both had 7 carries last year. Also in the mix, senior Elijah Tolliver was an honorable mention All-Big Sky with 950 yards and 7 touchdowns last year. And then also hoping we see some of true freshman from East Lansing, Jace Clorizio, coming in, obviously big recruit. Jonathan Smith was originally committed to Michigan State, flipped to Alabama, but then last minute, Jonathan Smith able to flip him back to Michigan State. Hoping to see some of him this year. Probably going to be a red shirt, but definitely want to see him get some run in those 4 allotted games that you're allowed to have before you decide if you're going to redshirt or not. The wide receiver corps is definitely the biggest upgrade this offseason for Michigan State, and I don't even think it's, really super close. Obviously, you have returning Nick Marsh, who set Michigan State receiving records, freshman receiving records for yards, receptions, but you're adding in Omari Kelly, who's had incredible hype out of spring ball, fall camp, coming in from Middle Tennessee State. Krishan McCray, Big Play McCray, they called him down there at Kent State. 13 touchdowns the last 2 years at Kent State. He was definitely someone that I was really excited in for that slot position. And coming in also for that slot position, Rodney Bullard Jr. from Valdosta State. Those 2 will likely be your slot guys this year, but you also got Evan Boyd from Central Michigan coming in. Originally, obviously went to high school in East Lansing. Brother played for Michigan State back a couple years ago as well. Tight end room, you have Jack Velling returning, coming back after he had a ton of hype coming in last year, obviously, but he did have the most receiving receptions of his career last year, 36, but he only had 1 touchdown. And after coming off a year at Oregon State where he had 8 touchdowns his last year there at Oregon State before coming over to Michigan State last year, I think with the more speed and weapons on offense, this can open up more for Jack this season. Brendan Parachek, Michael Masunis will be heavily involved this year as well. Junior and redshirt junior. They've unfortunately just battled injuries throughout their time here. I'd also like to see some of Jaden Savory, who was the #1 tight end recruit in the state of Michigan. I hope he gets the most out of his 4 opportunities this year and want to see him on the field as well. Offensive line, I believe, needs to be the biggest improvement on offense. I think wide receiver improved the most on offense, but I think offensive line, in order for this team to be successful, needs to be, probably the most improved on offense. You got Stanton Ramil healthy this year. Got him slighted at left tackle. Matt Golban, transfer from Wake Forest, coming in. Seems like he's the starting center right now, a captain already as well. And the right tackle spot, I believe it'll be Connor Moore, transfer from Montana State, was, definitely a highly regarded transfer in the transfer portal this winter. Ashton Lepo, who did get a lot of run last year at right tackle. I believe he will still see the field, especially it sounds like they're going to be rotating, guys the first couple of games of the season, I'd imagine, especially on Friday night. But those are the names to watch there. And then at the guards positions, I believe it'll go to left guard Christian Phillips, right guard Gavin Brocious. And then also look for Oregon State transfer Luca Vincius to get some run at the guard positions as well. And that's 7. I don't have the quote in front of me, but, scrolling on Twitter when recording this here, I believe Jonathan Smith mentioned in his weekly radio show that they feel comfortable with like 7 guys rotating in. And I believe that's the 7 guys right there currently. I know we'll probably see more than that, but I think once we get down like Boston College, that's like your, first Power 4 game, I guess is the better way to put it. That game, I think that's the 7 that you're comfortable with. Now, switching to the defense, the edge position. Now, listen, this is the group that needs the most improvement on the defensive side of the ball from last year. Only 19 sacks last year. Went a long stretch of the season without a sack. We know the story. We don't need to rehash it from last year, but starting at the edges, I have Daquan Dowse, who is a captain as well, and Jalen Thompson. Dowse had 1 sack last year, but I think guys like Tyler Gillison, the former Cincinnati transfer, and Isaac Smith, Texas Tech transfer, are other names to watch while searching for an impact edge rusher this season, someone to get home off the edge. Now, the linebacking group is probably the best position group on this defense and probably second best on the team aside from the wide receiver room. You got Jordan Hall, captain, going into his junior year. Didn't have the sophomore year he wanted last year, but he now seems like he is the face of this defense. Wayne Matthews, Darius Snow, I got slotted in at the other two starting spots at linebacker. Now, both of them, I like their ability to make plays in space. Darius obviously started his career playing some nickel, so I think that can translate over, even though he has bulked up and switched his body, switched positions over the last couple of years. I can't wait to see Brady Pretzloff as well, redshirt freshman this year. Reserve role, probably backing up that middle linebacker position held by Jordan Hall. Sam Edwards, jack of all trades, a captain for the team this year. And transfer from that school down the road, Samaj Bridgman and Marcellus Pullman, I believe, to be in the mix as well. The defensive backs, listen, this group has a lot of question marks this year. New faces. Joshua Eaton, former Texas Tech and Oklahoma transfer, seems to be the guy as the cornerback number one. A lot of college reps here as the 6th-year guy. I like Chance Rucker as the cornerback number 2, with guys like UConn transfer Malcolm Bell and sophomore Justin Denton, and possibly freshman Aiden West being involved in that defensive back rotation as well. At safety, I think it's clear. It's Nakai Martinez and Malik Spencer. Now, Nakai, who is your leading returning tackler from last year and your leading returning interception leader from last year. Nakai may be out week 1. Sounds like he has a lingering injury from even back to the spring, but he's questionable or game time decision for week 1. So I'd look for Amarion Smith to fill in that role if he is out week 1. Out of kicking, this is definitely a big question mark coming into this year, and an issue currently due to injuries. The top 2 guys essentially sounds like they've been banged up for a good amount of fall camp. Losing Jonathan Kim, to the NFL is definitely, I think, could be felt. But I believe for kicking, I think it will be Tariq Ahmed Basic. But if he is one of the 2 guys that is currently banged up, could be Blake Sislow, who played at Davenport. But then at punter, we know what the deal is. Ryan Eckley, best punter in the nation. Enough said there. And then just jumping into the kick return, punt return guys. I got Alante Brown slotted at kick return, and Amari Kelly at punt return. Just reading some tea leaves from some of the media availability that we've seen throughout fall camp here. But that's the breakdown of the roster and the names to watch out for. Now to the schedule-wise. In my opinion, this is how everything kind of needs to break down for a successful year for Michigan State. First off, you got to start 3-0 with your non-conference schedule. All of them at home, starting out with Western, obviously. Then you got Boston College in a revenge game, return game from last year. And then you got Youngstown State. You got to go 3-0 there. So that is 3. Your next 2 games, you go on the road to USC and Nebraska. Then you come home for UCLA for homecoming. That game is at 12 o'clock. That is 9 o'clock for the UCLA Bruins in their time zone. That has got to be a win there. So we'll keep counting. That's 4 wins that you need to have. Then you got on the road at Indiana. You got that school down the road. You got Minnesota, Penn State, Iowa, and Maryland at Ford Field to end the year. Maryland, end of the year, Ford Field. That's got to be a win. That's 5. So of those games, I think you got to have 5 wins right there. So in my opinion, if you win 2 of USC, Nebraska, Indiana, Minnesota, and Iowa, you're sitting in a fantastic position. That's 7 wins right there. You could shoot your shot in a rivalry game against that school down the road and Penn State. Indiana, obviously a rivalry game too, but these are the 2 rivalry games at home is the point I'm getting at. And listen, I think this is the most important game against that school down the road since 2008. I think, obviously last year they had a down year, finished the year strong, obviously, with 2 big wins against Ohio State and in the bowl game. But I think right now you're on the verge of, if you lose this year, 4 losses in a row. That cannot happen in this rivalry. Now, I think they're going to be a fine team this year. You'll see in my, Big Ten, record predictions, where I think that school on the road will be slotted at. But I do think there is something to say about a, freshman quarterback. I think he's going to be fine over there in Bryce Underwood. But, there is something to say about year 1. Do have a tough schedule as well on the road at Oklahoma and, some other games throughout the year. I think going to Nebraska is a tough matchup as well. So definitely some things to watch out for there. But I think this is the most important game because if you lose four in a row now and you lose this one at home, you know, I think Bryce for them is only going to continue to get better. Their recruiting is continuing to get better as well. But so that's kind of my feeling is why this game is so important this year. It's important every year. Don't get me wrong, but you can't lose four games in a row when their recruiting is also going up. Our recruiting is going up too, but not, we're still fighting to get in that top 25, get back to that top 25, ranking in the recruiting, if that makes sense. So that's why I'm putting a lot of stock into that game this year and why I think this is the most important one since 2008. Not saying it's the biggest, obviously 2021, 2015, other ones, obviously bigger matchups where we've had top 10 matchups, top 25 matchups, all that. So I don't think it'll be that, but I think just for the rivalry, this is going to be big. But anyway, that's where we sit with everything Michigan State. My current record prediction is 8-4, and I kind of just laid out how you get there. I think obviously there's so much change in college football with rosters and everything, so you don't really know who everyone's going to be, but I think there is a chance to get there. I think a bowl game is the minimum this year, that you have to get a bowl game, but I think I'm leaning more towards 7 or 8 is more likely. That's kind of exactly where I'm sitting at. 7, 8 wins. I'll go the higher side and say 8-4. But anyway, that'll do it for this one. As I said, we'll have more videos this week. Big Ten, NCAA as a whole preview, or should I say college football playoff preview. And then, of course, we'll be back for a game preview against Western for this Friday's opening game. But anyway, that'll do it for this one. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Peace out.